Alright, let's start with the kicks. We're going to combine the two main kicks here and give them some more low-end punch with an EQ. So, right-click and create a Spider Audio Merger and Splitter. And then underneath that, right-click and create, whilst holding Shift, an M-Class equalizer. Shift just means that it doesn't automatically connect to anything. Now, hit Tab to look at the back, and drag the outputs from channels 1 and 2 into the merger. Then from the merger into the equalizer, and from the equalizer into a spare channel in the mixer up here. Now if we have a look at the front, when I trigger this, see it's going through the merger into the equalizer. Whew, you'll be doing quite a lot of connections here. If you've ever used the British National Rail Service though, you'll be used to it. In the EQ, using param 1, take the Q to kind of higher mount and turn the gain right up. Now, if we have a listen, if we play it and turn the frequency down, you'll be able to hear there's some sections which are much louder than others. See, I think that's emphasizing the low end quite nicely. So if you search between 100 Hz and 300 Hz until you find that really punchy part that sounds like the loudest, then bring it down a little bit on the gain and widen the bandwidth a little bit as well. And I'll widen it to about 5 there. And this will vary considerably depending on the samples you use. Next, do the same thing with param 2 around the high end. So turn that right up, and if we take another listen, see, I think that's about the loudest point. So if I bring that down and widen it, that'll just emphasize the click of that kick drum quite nicely. So if I turn off the EQ, it's quite flat sounding, and with it, a lot punchier and more defined. So that's the kick drum sorted. Next, let's do that bass drop. At the moment, there's a tambourine sound over the top of it, which I want to get rid of. I chose this sample to show you a useful technique. So we're going to make a stereo imager. Remember to hold Shift when you create these. And an EQ. Then run that channel 3 in this case, into the imager, EQ, and the mixer. Now, if I just solo this bass drop so we can hear this, I'll just play it so we can hear it. Now, turn the crossover frequency down a little bit to about 500, something like that, and hit the solo low band button. Instant high frequency cutoff. Seriously useful. Now, in the EQ, I'm just going to boost the low shelf just by a bit, and the gain there. Just leave it at the default values just to bring up the really bassy low end. That's what bass drops are for. Lastly, let's sort out those snares. You may have noticed, I'll unsolo this now, that I've panned these left and right very slightly. This means I can widen them in the stereo imager later. Quite a few connections coming up. Just imagine you're going from Telford to Southampton on the train. If you don't know where those places are, that's what Google Maps was invented for. So create a merger and splitter. And again with the Shift, create an EQ, a stereo imager, and a compressor. And let's do all the connections. Fun times. And look back at the front again. So now we've got our claps going through here, as you can see. Again, to find the prominent parts, try bringing up a small band of frequencies. See, I found one around 1.3 kilohertz. That's quite prominent there. So if we widen that and bring it down a little bit, that just makes it a little snappier. And let's try again. There's one there, around 7 kilohertz, just the really high end there. That just brightens it up nicely. And also I'm going to boost the low shelf by quite a high bandwidth, just by a few decibels there, about 5 decibels, just to bring up the low end as well. Next, we're going to widen it with the stereo imager. I'll bring the low band down to fully mono, since having a wide low end is never a good thing unless you're a black R&B singer, and bring the high end right up to fully wide. just to make it nice and airy. In the compressor, turn the input gain and the threshold up a little bit. I'm going to turn the threshold to about minus 13 decibels and the ratio to completely full, and turn the attack to about 60 milliseconds. And that means that after 60 milliseconds the input is going to be taken down to minus 13 decibels completely, no matter how loud it is, which just gives that really sharp, snappy start to the snare, meaning it really cracks through the mix nicely. So if we take a listen, we've got all of our individual hits all polished, so let's mash them together a bit so they start sounding a bit more like they fit together. Shift Create up the top here, a maximizer, and also a Screen 4 distortion unit. Let's drag them up to the top, because we're going to be putting the mixer into these devices. So let's take the mixer into Screen 4, output of Screen 4 into the maximizer, and from the maximizer back into the combinator from devices. Now, in Screen 4, turn off cut and body and turn it to tape mode. This emulates that warm tape compression from the old compressors back in the day. So set the damage control at about a half, P1 at full, and P2 at about halfway as well. It gives that really nice compression. But mess around with P2 if you want to get some vastly different compressions, depending on what you're going for. Last but not least, turn the input gain up a bit on the maximizer and hit the 4 milliseconds look ahead. And that just makes it sound nice and compressed. Really big beat. And voila! You've got a nice hip-hop beat that meshes more than a white-collar business whose manager just learned the word synergy. Join me for day 2 where I'll be making a sweet hip-hop bass and adding in some hi-hats up in this bitch. See? English people can be gangster too. Yo.
If you found this tutorial useful, help me out by rating this video or posting a comment so other people can find it. And don't forget to check out my website, boyinaband.com. Have a nice day!